After letting my younger brother live in my rental property for free, I got a call from the city. He'd turned it into an illegal Airbnb. When I confronted him, he laughed and said, "You weren't using it." Why shouldn't I? I thought about evicting him. But then I found a clause in our parents' will that let me. I'm 41 years old. I've lived in Iowa most of my life. I'm not rich, but I've worked steady jobs since I was a teenager. I got married young, divorced later, and never had kids. I've always been the responsible one in my family. The one who showed up on time, paid the bills, followed through. My younger brother Jeremy is 34. He's never held a job for more than a year. He's the kind of guy who always thinks he's about to get rich doing something easy. He's had a dozen different business ideas that all fell apart. Dropshipping, crypto, flipping sneakers, selling phone cases on TikTok, you name it, he's tried it and failed. But the real problem with Jeremy is that he never learns. Every time he screws up, someone saves him. Usually it was our parents. They passed away 3 years ago in a car crash. It was sudden. I handled everything, the hospital, the funeral, the estate, the will, all of it. Jeremy was around but not helpful. He showed up late to the service, left early, and didn't want to deal with paperwork. That's when I ended up with the house in Cedar Falls. It was a small 2-bedroom place our mom inherited from her parents. Our parents had been renting it out to college kids for years. It wasn't fancy, but it was fully paid off and in good shape. It wasn't my dream home, but it meant something to me. I thought maybe I'd fix it up one day and keep it in the family. Then Jeremy came to me saying he needed a place to stay. He said he'd lost his job again. Said his friend kicked him out. Said he just needed a break and somewhere quiet to figure things out. I felt bad for him. He looked rough, unshaven, tired, like he hadn't eaten a real meal in days. So I told him he could live in the Cedar Falls house. I told him I wouldn't charge him rent for 6 months, but after that we'd talk. He agreed. I thought I was doing the right thing. At first, he thanked me. He said he'd clean the place up. Maybe fix the porch. He even promised to help with yard work. But he never actually did any of it. 6 months came and went. I called him. No answer. I texted him. He replied a day later with a thumbs up emoji. When I asked about rent, he said he was still figuring things out, and that things were tight right now. I didn't push. I let it go. That was a mistake. Almost a year passed. I didn't visit the property because I trusted him. I figured he was living quietly, trying to get his life together. I was wrong. One day, I got a call from the city of Cedar Falls. The woman on the line asked if I was the property owner of a house on Elmwood Avenue. I said yes. She said, "We've received multiple complaints about that address. There are reports of noise, parties, parking violations, and an unlicensed short-term rental. Do you have a permit to operate an Airbnb?" I froze. Airbnb? No, absolutely not. Well, someone's been running a short-term rental out of that property for a while. You need to respond or we'll start issuing fines. I told her I'd look into it and hung up. Then I went online. I typed in Airbnb Cedar Falls. And it didn't take long. There it was. My house. He had listed it under a fake name, Jeremy D., and titled it something cheesy like Modern Boho Hideaway. He had professional photos taken of the living room, the backyard, even the bathroom. There were over 30 5-star reviews. One said, "Host was great. Loved the quiet neighborhood. We'll book again." He had been doing this for months, while I paid the taxes and insurance, while he ignored my messages, while I gave him a place to live for free. I felt sick. The next morning, I drove 2 hours to Cedar Falls. When I got there, a couple was loading suitcases into their trunk. I asked if they were staying there. They said yes. I nodded and waited for them to leave. Then I knocked on the door. Jeremy opened it wearing a hoodie and gym shorts. He looked relaxed, like he had no idea what was coming. He smiled. "Hey, what a surprise." I stepped inside without asking. "We need to talk." He raised an eyebrow. "Sure. What's up?" "I got a call from the city. They said you've been running an Airbnb out of here." He didn't even try to deny it. He grinned. "Yeah, I figured it out, man. Easy money. You weren't using the house. Why let it sit there doing nothing? You said you needed a place to live. I do live here. Sometimes, when it's not booked. I usually crash at a friend's place when guests are here." I stared at him. "You didn't think to tell me? Would you have said yes?" "No, well, there you go. I asked him if he realized the city could find me, if he understood that listing a property without a permit was illegal, that it could hurt my insurance, maybe even my taxes. He laughed. You're overthinking it. Nobody cares. Everyone's doing it. I turned and walked out before I punched him in the face. I didn't say anything else. I just drove home. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't stop thinking about how smug he was. How he grinned like he'd pulled off some genius move. Like I was the idiot for not thinking of it first. Then I remembered something. When I was handling our parents' estate, there was a clause in the will. Something about the Cedar Falls property. I got out the file box where I kept the documents. Sure enough, there it was. In the event the secondary heir misuses or abuses their right of access to any shared property, the primary heir may revoke access without prior approval. They knew. They must have seen this kind of thing coming from him. They gave me the power to shut it down. I called a lawyer the next day. We started putting everything together. First, I got screenshots of the Airbnb listing. Then I hired a private investigator to book a stay and document the process. He took photos of the lockbox code, the condition of the house, the guest instructions. Jeremy emailed him, all of it. Then I sent Jeremy a formal letter. Certified mail. It said he had violated the conditions of his stay. That he was being evicted. That he had 2 weeks to vacate the property or I would file with the court. His reaction? He texted me, "You serious?" I didn't reply. 2 days later, he showed up at my place. Loud, angry. "You're kicking me out? After everything?" I told him calmly, "You broke the agreement. You broke the law. This isn't a debate." He said, "You can't do this. This house was part of Mom and Dad's estate. I have rights too." I smiled. "Not anymore." He left without another word. 2 weeks later, he was gone. What happened next? That's where things really started to turn. And trust me, I wasn't done with him yet. After Jeremy moved out, I thought it was over. I was wrong. A few weeks later, I got a call from my real estate agent. I had asked him to help me sell the Cedar Falls house. I figured I was done with it. Too many memories. Too much drama. But my agent said, "Hey, just wanted to ask. Were you planning to sell the house with the tenant still on site?" I was confused. "No. Jeremy's gone." He paused. "Someone's still living there. The neighbor across the street called me. Said there's been a car in the driveway almost every night." I felt cold. "What kind of car?" He described it. It was Jeremy's old black Honda. I didn't even call him. I just got in my truck and drove back to Cedar Falls. When I pulled up to the house, his car was right there. I knocked on the door. No answer. I pounded on it harder. After a minute, he opened it shirtless like he'd just woken up. "Dude," he said, rubbing his eyes. "Relax. You're not supposed to be here. I'm not staying here. I was just crashing for a night. That's not illegal. You were evicted. You lost all rights to be on this property." He shrugged. "You can't prove I'm living here." That's when I noticed something behind him. Pile of boxes. Groceries on the counter. A used coffee mug on the table. He was living there again. I called the police. They came. I showed them the eviction papers. The will. The deed. Everything. But Jeremy played it smart. He told them he was just picking up his stuff. Said he hadn't officially moved all the way out yet and was doing it in stages. And technically, he hadn't changed the locks or broken in. The officer pulled me aside and said, "Legally, this is a gray area. If he still has belongings in the home, we can't forcibly remove him unless there's a court order confirming he's trespassing post-eviction." I was livid. So what do I do? File again. But this time, make it a trespass complaint after a completed eviction. Shouldn't be hard to prove. I looked at Jeremy as the cops left. He smirked at me. That same cocky smile he had when I first confronted him about the Airbnb. That was when I realized something. He wasn't just clueless. He was enjoying this. He was playing a game. So I changed mine. The new plan, I didn't go back to court right away. Instead, I got to work. First, I changed the utilities. The house was in my name anyway, so I shut everything down: water, power, internet. It was still spring, but it would get cold at night. Then I put up a sign in the yard: property not for rent. No Airbnb. No trespassing. Owner will prosecute. Jeremy took it down the next day. I put up 2 more. One on the lawn. one nailed to a tree. I called the city again, gave them new photos and told them he was back on site, violating their previous citations. They said they'd investigate again. I started posting online, on Nextdoor, on the local Cedar Falls community Facebook group. I warned people not to rent or interact with anyone claiming to offer stays at that address. A few folks replied saying they had seen an Airbnb listing pop back up under a different name, same pictures, slightly different title, quiet retreat near campus. I gathered all of it. Screenshots, URLs, emails, reviews. Then I sent it all to Airbnb again. This time I got a direct response. They took down the listing and said the host was permanently removed from their platform. I didn't stop there. I filed a formal complaint with the county and sent all documents, including evidence of zoning violations, unlicensed business activity, and the original will clause. My lawyer said if he even steps foot back on that property, we'll bury him legally. But Jeremy wasn't done. About a week later, I got a message from my aunt. She said Jeremy had reached out saying I was stealing his part of the inheritance, that I was abusing the power our parents left me. Then another family member texted me. Same thing. Jeremy was going around telling everyone I cheated him out of the house, that I tricked him into leaving and was selling the place behind his back. He even posted on Facebook, said I was a snake and that mom and dad would be ashamed. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't explain, but I kept receipts, screenshots, dates, messages, copies of the will and the clause that let me act as executor with full authority over the property. Then I made a quiet call to our parents' estate lawyer. Can we do anything about defamation or interference? I asked. He said, if he keeps spreading lies that hurt the value of the sale or your personal reputation, we can absolutely act. But I'd suggest we hit him somewhere else first. Where? His trust. See, Jeremy was supposed to receive the rest of his inheritance when he turned 35. It was a small trust fund, around $38,000 our parents left behind. Nothing crazy, but still a decent chunk of money. It was set up with one condition: he had to be employed full-time for 1 year before the funds could be released. It was meant to keep him from blowing it all in a week. Guess who controlled the verification? Me. My lawyer helped me submit a formal notice to the bank holding the trust. Jeremy had failed to meet the requirements. He was not eligible for disbursement. They froze it. He found out a few days later. I know because he left me a voicemail. It was pure rage. Screaming, swearing, threats, tears. He even begged at the end. Said he needed the money, that he was planning to use it to start fresh and build something real. I didn't call him back. Instead, I prepared the final move. No more warnings. No more chances. The house. The trust. The lies. I was going to end it all. Legally. Permanently. Publicly. I thought freezing the trust would stop him. I thought maybe he'd finally back off, realize he couldn't win, and go find a real job. But Jeremy had one more trick up his sleeve, and it hit harder than anything he'd done so far. 2 weeks after I blocked the trust, I got served a thick envelope from a local attorney's office. Inside, a lawsuit. Jeremy was suing me for wrongful eviction, abuse of executor powers, breach of fiduciary duty, and emotional distress. He had actually found a lawyer willing to take the case. Some bottom feeder in Waterloo who probably smelled drama and dollar signs. The lawsuit claimed I manipulated our parents' will, used my position to cut Jeremy out of his inheritance, and intentionally sabotaged his business venture. I sat there in my kitchen reading the documents over and over, trying to understand how the hell this was happening. I'd followed the law. I had evidence. I had documentation. I had done everything the right way. But now I was being dragged into court. I called my lawyer right away. He wasn't surprised. Guys like Jeremy don't stop when they lose. They double down, he said. Do we need to fight this in court? We will. But before we do, I want you to dig. Dig? He leaned in. I want everything. Old texts, emails, recordings, anything that shows he knew what he was doing. I want to bury this lawsuit in facts so deep, they can't even see daylight. So that's what I did. I pulled out every email from Jeremy asking for help. Every message where he promised to move out. I even found a voice memo he sent after one of our fights. He was drunk, bragging about how he figured out a way to make cash without doing anything, and that I was too straight-laced to stop him. I also found something else, an email Jeremy sent to a friend before he moved into the house. It said, "Once I get in, I'll turn that place into a gold mine." He never checks up on it anyway. That sealed it. But the twist wasn't just the lawsuit. It was what came next. One of Jeremy's former Airbnb guests reached out to me. They found my contact info through one of the online posts I'd made about the illegal listing. She said she'd stayed there for a weekend and had a really weird experience. Jeremy had promised her the house would be empty, but he showed up unannounced the second night, drunk and angry. She said he claimed she hadn't paid the real price and threatened to kick her out. She recorded part of it. She sent me the audio. I couldn't believe it. Jeremy's voice was slurred, aggressive. He kept demanding more money. At one point he said, "This is my house. I can come in whenever I want." It was perfect. I forwarded it to my lawyer. 2 days later, he filed a counterclaim against Jeremy for fraud, breach of occupancy law, and misrepresentation of property rights. But we weren't done. We reached out to Airbnb's legal team with the recording and told them that if they didn't assist, we'd subpoena them for logs. Airbnb didn't want the bad press. They agreed to provide user activity logs showing Jeremy had been warned multiple times about violations but kept relisting the property under fake names. We had a paper trail. We had audio. We had screenshots. And then came the final twist. My lawyer dug into Jeremy's financial records during discovery. And guess what he found? Jeremy had been collecting cash payments on the side, telling some guests to cancel their booking through Airbnb and pay him directly through Venmo. That way, he could avoid Airbnb's fees and keep it all under the table. What he didn't realize was that one of those guests was a college student who'd used her school debit card tied to a university grant program. She'd needed a receipt for reimbursement, and when she couldn't find one, she reported the transaction. The university had flagged it and launched an internal investigation. Now the IRS was looking into it too. Jeremy wasn't just facing eviction and a lost trust fund. He was staring down the barrel of tax fraud. I hadn't even lifted a finger at this point. All I did was protect what was mine and keep every receipt. He came after me with lies and cheap tricks. But the thing about guys like him, they always leave a trail, and I was going to use every single piece of it. The court date came faster than I expected. Jeremy walked into the courtroom wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt, hair slicked back like he was trying to look put together. His lawyer looked like he was in it for the drama. They sat across from me like they thought this was going to be their big win. I didn't say a word. I didn't even look at him. I just sat with my lawyer and waited. What happened next? It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck with Jeremy as the conductor. First, the judge asked Jeremy's lawyer to present their case. Started out dramatic like a bad TV movie. He said I manipulated the will, that I stole my brother's inheritance, that I evicted him without cause and left him homeless. Then he claimed emotional damages, that Jeremy had been traumatized by the betrayal of his only sibling. He even brought up our parents, said I was dishonoring their wishes. I just stared at the wall while they talked, let them dig deeper. When it was our turn, my lawyer stood up, calm and steady. No theatrics, no emotion. He pulled out the binder. He started with the will, clear language, notarized, signed by both parents. The clause that gave me full control of the property and authority to revoke Jeremy's access for any misuse. Then came the photos, screenshots of the Airbnb listings posted under fake names, reviews from guests, photos of the trash pileups, noise complaints, city fines. Then he played the audio recording, the one from the guest Jeremy tried to shake down for more money. Everyone in that courtroom could hear Jeremy slurring, yelling, calling the woman names, claiming it was his house and his rules. Jeremy's face turned red. But we weren't done. My lawyer handed the judge copies of the messages Jeremy sent me where he admitted running the Airbnb behind my back. The one where he said I'd never find out. The one where he said it's not like you were using it. Then came the real hammer. We submitted logs from Airbnb showing he had been warned multiple times and kept making fake accounts. Then proof of the off-platform payments, Venmo screenshots from guests who confirmed they paid him under the table. And finally, the best part, a letter from the IRS confirming an active audit for undeclared income related to short-term rentals and failure to report earnings over $10,000. Jeremy's lawyer went pale. The judge asked if he had any rebuttal. He stuttered, said he needed a recess. The judge gave him 10 minutes. They never came back. An hour later, court resumed without them. The judge dismissed Jeremy's lawsuit in full, called it frivolous and baseless. Then she awarded me full damages, $11,300 in legal fees plus another $8,000 for loss of potential sale value due to the false listings and tenant dispute. But it didn't stop there. She issued a restraining order. Jeremy was banned from the property and couldn't contact me directly again. Then she referred the fraud evidence to the county prosecutor. Jeremy was hit with a criminal investigation for tax evasion, illegal business operation, and zoning violations. Within a month, it all fell apart for him. His bank account got frozen. His credit cards were maxed out. He got evicted from the crappy apartment he moved into after I locked him out. Then the real hammer came down. The trust fund? Gone. The bank overseeing it reviewed everything and decided Jeremy was permanently ineligible due to criminal behavior and misuse of inheritance guidelines. The fund was legally allowed to reallocate the remaining amount to charitable organizations listed as secondary beneficiaries. That was my parents' decision, not mine. Jeremy lost $38,000 forever. Half went to a local food bank. The other half went to an animal rescue our mom used to donate to. He tried to appeal. The court laughed him out. Last I heard, he was living in his ex-girlfriend's basement in Waterloo, working part-time delivering groceries. He still posts weird cryptic stuff online sometimes, things like, you can't trust anyone, even family, and some people don't deserve power. I ignore it. Now here's the truth. I didn't want revenge at the start. I just wanted peace. But Jeremy made this war. He lied. He stole. He mocked me. He weaponized our family's memory to get what he wanted. So I gave him what he earned. Every legal document, every screenshot, every log, every word. He thought I was soft. He thought I wouldn't fight back. He thought wrong. The house sold 3 months after everything ended. Clean title, no baggage. I took the money and used some of it to take my first real vacation in 10 years. I slept better that week than I had in a long, long time. And I realized something while sitting on a quiet beach in Florida, watching the waves roll in. Sometimes, the best way to honor the people who raised you is by protecting what they left behind, even if it means destroying the person they spoiled most.